Okay, I'd like to open up the audit committee meeting for the month of January. And geez, we're not that far behind. I thought we'd be much further. That means I can get home relatively late. Okay, first thing are the minutes. I understand that we have a change in the minutes. As discussed, the subject audit committee minutes need to be revised to reflect the following clarification from the November 2008 meeting with regard to MTA Bus Company implementation of the Long Island bus payroll system. Mike Moran stated that full implementation of the payroll system for administrative employees, that's the clarification, will occur in the second quarter of 2009. Please be sure that this is reflected at Monday's audit committee meeting. So if we just make sure it is, we will do it. Okay, the second thing on the agenda is audit committee work plan. I think we have to vote on it. This is the first one for this year, so we have to vote on the audit committee plan. So if I can get a motion to approve the audit committee work plan as submitted. Get a second? Aye. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Glenn. We're going to have our independent auditor, Glenn Friedrich from Deloitte & Touche, will discuss the consolidated interim financial statement.
Good afternoon. Previously, the third quarter financial statements were distributed to all the audit committee members. We, as your independent auditors, have reviewed the accompanying consolidated interim financial statements of the MTA as of and for the period ending June 30th or September 30th, 2008, in accordance with the Statement on Standards for Accounting and Review Services. As we've always noted, a review is substantially less in scope than an audit and consists primarily of inquiries and analytical reviews with management. The objective of an audit is the expression of an opinion on the financial statements taken as a whole. Accordingly, we do not express such an opinion on these financial statements because they were a review and not an audit. However, based upon our review, we are not aware of any material modifications that need to be made to these financial statements in order for them to be in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions as it relates to the September 30th, 2008 financial statements.
I guess, Glenn, the only two things that come to mind are what was the impact of the other post-employment benefit obligations? And the second thing is the impact of the pollution remediation costs.
Not a problem. Within the financial statements, on pages 18 and 19, the disclosures are labeled as such. Mr. Chairman, if you go to the balance sheet first on page 18, under the current liabilities, you have the current portion of the pollution remediation, which is $20 million, which is GASB 49, which was effective for this particular year end December 31st, 2008, and it has been implemented since the first quarter of 2008. If you skip down a couple lines in the non-current liability section, you will see the post-employment benefit other than pensions, which is the liability, not the expense, but it's the liability that will continue to grow over, I believe, a 22-year period, which was the amortization period that the MTA elected to amortize the unfunded accrued actuarial liability. And then a couple lines down is the pollution remediation projects. Again, that is the long-term piece under this particular standard, and that's the liability. Then if you were to flip the page, on page 19, you have up top under the operating expenses, you have the post-employment benefits other than pensions, which for this particular quarter was running $1,251,000. And then for GASB 49, the pollution remediation projects is roughly $40 million. And that was disclosed also in the footnotes to the financial statements, because I know one of the items that was on the agenda as well was the accounting and auditing update. And obviously this has been addressed in the footnotes because GASB 49 was applicable for the year ended December 31st, 2008, as well as for the quarterly financial statements.
Okay. Any questions in regards to okay, I need a motion to pass these so we can get them on the web. Motion made, second. in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried. We are real.
When is the fourth quarter going to be ready?
They're doing the annual audit now. That's
We'll be in the year-end audit. We should have something finalized certainly by April 15th, but probably pencils down March 31st.
It's going to be fun. That
Well,
last
it's,
quarter was quite a doozy.
It's interesting.
Okay, we're now going to look at the audit services for 2008. Mike has sent you an audit status report, and he will also go over his 2009 audit plan. Mike.
Thank you, Jim. Just to refresh the committee on our strategy for 2008, which was to support agency-wide goals and initiatives to minimize risk in the organization, focus audits to ensure safe and reliable services, and to concentrate on cost savings. One of our biggest challenges is to provide audit coverage for 6 agencies and MTA headquarters. This slide shows where we spent our time in 2008, and it was consistent with what we had planned and what was approved in the beginning of the year of 2008. At each agency, we break down all activities into the MTA's 7 business priorities, and this chart illustrates how the time was spent. This slide is a snapshot of our results in 2008. I'm extremely proud of our accomplishments, and I'd like to thank my direct reports that are here today, as well as the entire audit staff for these results. We made more than 750 recommendations for improvement, with a total dollar impact of $61 million to the organization. Our savings on the operating side resulted from identifying revenue enhancements, expense reductions, and contract disallowances. We follow up with all the agencies to ensure that these savings are achieved. Through our interaction with agency management, we performed a lot of work on performance indicators in 2008 at New York City Transit and Long Island Railroad. We continued our auditing of MTA revenues, investments in real estate activities, which are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We also performed various audits related to service delivery at bus depots, subway locations, and bridges and tunnels. We also participated in various phases of the Business Service Center, including serving on the selection committee for the center's implementation and the quality assurance aspect. We also worked on the all-agency chart of accounts. With that, I'd like to review with the committee our 2009 audit plan.
I just want to say, in transit alone, the work that you did on on-time performance, which all of us had some doubts and questions, and you went in and audited it, and as a result, I think the organization has gotten a lot better in terms of understanding what's really going on and measuring properly. So we're all very, very appreciative of that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And on a good news note, the agency hired 2 of our auditors as of Friday to work in that department, so it was a good news story as well.
That proves the point.
Good news. Good news. Good news for them, bad news for me because I have to replace them.
Mike, one of the things that you mentioned in the 2008 report, really a couple things.
Sure.
The sole source practices that you're working on, looking at what's being done within all the agencies.
Yes.
Maybe you just go over that a little bit, just to let them know that the agencies are now looking to you to do a little bit of that work.
Oh, absolutely.
That sole source.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing is that you and I talked the other day, and one of the things, we have awful lot of people. We have the external auditor, we have the inspector general, and we have the auditor general,
Correct.
who all make recommendations to their financial statements or their findings. And I looked at some, and some of them, some of them are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old before they're implemented. So it seems to me that, and I mentioned to Mike, and he seemed to think it was a good idea, and that was whenever any of these 3 make a recommendation, and the response from the agency is over 3 months, they have to come back to us and tell us why. Only because it just seems that it gets pushed off. Some of them are 3, 4, and 5 years down the road. So it just seemed to me it was a good follow-up
Sure.
on all these recommendations. Yeah, right.
Well, actually, we have a very high implementation rate among the agencies,
Yes.
so, I don't think there would be a lot of recommendations that would come to you, and we do diligently follow up with them quarterly and get in writing the status of them, and I also perform periodic audits. One of the things we changed, though, I'm going to have Lamont Kurse in February come to the committee and give you a status of all the open recommendations for the MTA and all the agencies. And in that, as he aged them, he'll also be telling you why, if some are delayed, why is that, and what's the new date. And then going forward, if they need more time, and particularly in the new ones, we will go through this new process where we'll come to the committee and we'll even bring the person with us to say why they need more time, which I think that should be the exception rather than the norm.
Exactly. Okay.
Good point, Jim.
Okay.
So with this, I'd like to go over our 2009 audit plan with you. We begin our planning process in September, and it takes us several months to complete, resulting in a comprehensive risk assessment, which is fully documented. The foundation of our audit plan was developed for a formal risk assessment that is performed in accordance with the Institute of Internal Auditor standards. The main objectives of our risk assessment process was to assure ourselves that the risk to the MTA in achieving its business objectives was fully defined and understood, that our universe of auditable entities addressed those risks, and that there are no gaps in audit coverage. As in past years, we also meet with our independent accountants, Deloitte & Touche and Price Waterhouse, and input was solicited from more than 300 personnel across the agency at various levels. The results of our risk assessment identified 561 audit activities at the MTA and its agencies. An auditable unit is a candidate for a potential audit, which is ranked into high, moderate, and low categories. It is our goal that the auditable units are covered at least once during a 5-year cycle. The results of our risk assessment, when applied to our resources, identified 175 audits for 2009. This is a preview of how we plan to spend our time at the agencies in 2009. These percentages have been reviewed with each agency president, and they've agreed with the results. This chart illustrates the number of audits to be performed at each agency from the financial, operational, and technology and compliance perspective. It's consistent with the level of audits performed in previous years. For our capital program, this chart shows the number of audits to be performed at each of the agencies. Our emphasis here is on such projects as the 2nd Avenue Subway, East Side Access, the Fulton Transit Center, and the number 7 line, to make sure those costs and those projects are performing well.
Which is why capital construction gets the lion's share of the increase.
True. Make sure the right slide. In 2009, our support of agency-wide goals includes assisting Lindy Simone and the Business Service Center. Several projects have been identified and discussed with the committee. These include the Procurement Review Panel, quality assurance work, and the Charter Commodities. At the agencies, we'll continue to minimize risk and promote effective corporate governance. Also, we understand MTA's fiscal situation, and we continue to work to identify further cost-saving opportunities. This is a snapshot of our audit areas engaged under the MTA 7 business priorities, some of which I already mentioned to you. Yes.
You're probably going to want to do 7 extensions instead of 7 flying over projects.
Yes, we'll change that.
That was quick.
Good catch. You always have to have one typo, right? A challenge for us is to keep our activities balanced within the agencies and amongst the projects we select to review. We recognize our primary role as the independent internal auditor for the agencies in a traditional sense. Again, we balance that role against our getting involved with management support type projects. We believe that we have and will continue to maintain a balanced perspective. What I just showed you is an aggressive audit plan for 2009. To achieve quality results, it takes a quality audit staff. I'm pleased to inform the committee that we have a staff with a high degree of education, competency, and certification. We currently have 4 positions and vacant, and we're taking action to fill those. Finally, as we do every year, and Jim mentioned, we plan to continue to coordinate our activities throughout the year with the independent public accounting firms, the MTA Inspector General, who I met with last week, the City State Control Offices, and the Chief Compliance Officer. So with that, pending any of your questions, I'd like to request your approval of the 2009 audit plan. I ended up on the right slide at the end slide, too.
Any questions or discussions? I had a discussion with Mike last week, and I told him that I thought it was important that his audit group make sure they make some presentations to us, because they go unheralded. They do a lot of work, and sometimes they don't get the pat on the back that they deserve. And I can tell you that going through the shared service, business service group model, the first thing I was told was that the best shared service group in the whole MTA is the audit group. They're accepted by everyone. They work with everyone. They're part of the team, and consequently, a lot of the things that Lenny's doing is going to be based upon how well they get along. Second thing, speaking of Lenny, one of the things that we've discussed over the last month is a reporting entity for the business service group, and I guess the business service group is going to report to the audit committee, so that we can look at it and look at it like an agency. And I think that
Sure.
that's pretty much what Lenny would like too. Lenny, would you like to say anything? Sitting back there, I don't want to surprise you, but.
I think it's a good idea. It's good that we set the case as we go, so you guys know successes and any potential problems. Like the year when we took the bus company in, and Mike and I do work very well together. He's been phenomenal. He's been extra. He can do anything I ask for, and we have a great relationship. So I'm looking forward to coming to meet you guys. Good.
Good, thanks.
So the-
Last but not least, Glenn, you and I discussed just a half hour ago the fact that we don't have the pension audits, and that's been put off in the work plan until February.
That's correct.
Okay, maybe you can discuss why.
Sure, be happy to. With regards to the pension audits, the MTA defined benefit plan, some of the investments that were selected for the current audit that's going on right now are in what they call commingled funds, whereby the trustee, J.P. Morgan Chase, receives from the fund managers statements that in essence do not have a readily determinable fair market value, so they're almost deemed, or they are deemed, to be an alternative type investment. The issue becomes, how do you value these when there is no value that is readily determinable on an open market? It involves specialists, it involves a lot of due diligence. The other issue becomes that a lot of these funds invest in investments that don't coincide with the MTA's year end. So you could be a 630, you could be a 930, for which financial statements are issued for those particular funds. But again, there are no audited financial statements for which you can get a net asset value as of 12/31. So now you have to go back to the fund managers and delve into this. We've been working with management very closely, and everyone is involved trying to get the information from the fund managers. Another issue that cropped up was related to the demographic information that your actuaries, Milliman, use to calculate the ARC for the end of the year for the particular plan. Some of the demographic information was conveyed to us, late, due to the fact that people were working feverishly to get the information and make certain that it was, in fact, accurate. Because if it's not, obviously, then the ARC, or the contribution that is paid for that particular year, could be overstated or understated depending on quote-unquote head count. So that's something we worked on with management, and I think on a go-forward basis will be addressed so that it's remitted timely. I mean, management takes this seriously, and it's one of those things where until you know for certain that the population is accounted for in its entirety, you do not want to sit there and be in a position to go back and have to adjust the ARC, because obviously that affects the financial statements for the pension plans, as well as the funding from the financial statements from the headquarters perspective. So that's where we are. I mean, currently we're pretty comfortable with the information we've been receiving, and we're hopeful that by the February meeting we will have the investments tied down to a point whereby we can issue our report on the MTA defined benefit plan.
If I'm not mistaken, this is we've been later than this in the past.
You were much later last year, much later.
So that
And
February-
there was issues last year, Mr. Chairman, as it related to J.P. Morgan Chase and the conversion, and there still are some issues with regards that were addressed up front as it relates to, because this is a master trust. The MTA defined benefit plan is a master trust, which impacts the Long Island Railroad plan as well. So when we spoke with management early on in the start of the audit, there was concerns with the statements that were received from the trustee as it relates to mistakes that needed to be corrected. They were corrected, but they were corrected subsequent to. So the financial statements reflect the accurate picture, if you would, of the financial statements not only for the MTA but from Long Island Railroad. So there was a bunch of items that cropped up that were unforeseen that we thought were dealt with last year, and it wasn't due to anything of management's not being responsive. Management was on top of it. It's one of those things that happens, and given the scrutiny that the financial markets are receiving, I think it's prudent to make certain that we have the investments, tied down whereby we're ultimately comfortable with the fair market values of those particular investments.
Okay, now I think probably next month. We have a meeting next month? Next month. Maybe yourself and we get PricewaterhouseCoopers, just give us an idea of how you're progressing through the 2008 audit.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Not a
Just
problem.
to keep us on board as we go.
Be happy to.
Give us an update.
Sure thing.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. We need a vote on the audit plan as submitted by Mike. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Second? Any opposed?
Thank you so much. Great job. Thank you.